We've got about another hour of programming here for you, both in the parlor at the Grand Hotel, and those of you who are streaming us. I appreciate your willingness to participate in this conference from around the state and hopefully around the nation. My name is Brad Williams. I've been your host for the last 2 days. You're going to still have to look at my face a few more times. I apologize for that, but that's how these things go. Our first session this afternoon, and we're close to noon, on Live from Mackinac, sponsored by DTE Energy, is a conversation about FOIA and good government with Senator Jeremy Moss from Southfield and Senator Ed McBroom from Vulcan. Do I have that right? Vulcan, which is in the UP. Over the course of this conference, I always ask folks how their trip up was to Mackinac Island. And Senator McBroom is the one person I had to ask how his trip down was. So this will be a great conversation. Our moderator for the next couple sessions is Chad Livengood from the Detroit News. So gentlemen, take it away.
All right, well, that trip from the UP is over and down for you, Senator McBroom.
Well, he does it every week.
Yes, he does, yes.
This was less than halfway to Lansing for me, though.
Yeah, this is an easy one, yeah. And remind me, is this your district here? I can't remember. No, you don't have this. You don't have.
I've got almost everything. Not the Sioux, not St. Ignace, and not Mackinac Island.
Okay. This isn't my district either.
Yeah, it's a little ways away from Southfield. So we want to talk about the Freedom of Information Act. For anybody who doesn't know, that is the Michigan's law that governs the release and handling of public records. And Michigan is one of 2 states in the union that does not have a law where the FOIA law applies to the legislature and the governor. And you two, as long as I can remember, and it feels like it's going on a decade, have been on kind of a quixotic journey to try to get this added to the law. And wanted to just start with, Senator McBroom, about where we are, where this stands right now, and why can't you get it done?
Well, we did get it done where we have control. We've got it out of the Senate again. And I think that right now it's just a pawn on the chessboard of the politics in Lansing. And I'm optimistic that it's going to happen. I think all the stars are lined up. It's just the House sees this as our priorities, and that gives them additional leverage over some of their priorities.
Yeah, Senator Ross, what's your thoughts about how the current state of this is going?
No, I agree with Senator McBroom. I think this is the year that I think we can actually get it done. I've talked to the Speaker about this. Obviously, he has his HEAP plan, Hall, Ethics, and Transparency. I just want to add an F to the end of it for FOIA. I keep saying HEAP. So I really believe there's an opportunity to get this done. It has been on the board in the House before. It has passed unanimously in the House before. Obviously, we did our job to get it out of the Senate. This is something that the only people that make the argument against transparency are the people that are doing something wrong. So this is an opportunity in this kind of divided government to put up something that we all can embrace and support.
What does this bill do? I mean, just kind of what's the structure of it, and what will it still exempt from public access?
Well, for the governor's office, it's really just, they already follow FOIA for all the individual departments. They just don't at the executive office level. Yep. So it opens up the regular documents and stuff that are already, they're accustomed to doing. So it's an easier hurdle for the executive branch. There are a few exemptions for kind of their early sketches of what the budget might look like, and if they're doing investigations on a governor or another public official, if they're vetting somebody for a position, those things wouldn't be exposed. But otherwise, it's pretty broad. The legislature is a little different. It's a different animal, a lot of different rules. We have constitutional protections for speech and debate. So it's a bit more nuanced. What would open up some of the things I remember is our calendar, who visits our office, our communication with other state agencies on behalf of our constituents, and our communications with non-constituents that are not related to developing a bill.
So if you're communicating, Senator Moss, with the Health and Human Services Department about policy, would those communications be kept kept exempt from disclosure?
No, I mean, a lot of that information would be subject to public disclosure. A lot of that
I mean, right now we can get it.
On the other
If we
end.
go FOIA,
On
the
the other
other,
end.
the
Absolutely.
recipient agency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The things that would be more shielded are the communications between Senator Moss and I as we develop a policy
That's right.
issue. And certainly our private communications with constituents on their behalf. We want to protect their ability to communicate with us. But I think, the notable thing is I get requests all the time, contact the DNR on my behalf on this issue. Well, now that constituent will be able to check and make sure I actually did it.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of many transparency proposals in Lansing. On the House side, the House has adopted a whole new set of procedures for the disclosure of earmarks, making lawmakers put their name on it up front so that we don't get like $1 billion added to the state budget at 6 o'clock and we voted on it by 9 o'clock, which happened once or twice. And so will the Senate Democrats go along with something like that in a budget deal?
Yeah, we actually have engaged in that for the very first time as Senate Democrats last time. We were the ones who, after the budget was passed, did outline which specific projects were sponsored by which senator. I don't think that's been done before, with Senate Democrats leading the charge. I'm open to expanding and growing that accountability and transparency. If everything that I put in the budget, I'm fine with it being open to public scrutiny. And in many cases, I want to take ownership over that and demonstrate I'm fighting for these investments in my community. And I would hope that every legislator would want to do the same. So if there can be an opportunity for even more transparency in the budget process, count me in.
What about Senator McBroom? What about campaign finance? We have effectively two systems of campaign finance. We have the committees that raise money, the PACs, the candidate committees, and then we have that's all disclosed, and it has been. And there's limits, and there's a whole lot of set of rules, and we can see if you bought a Snickers bar or something, or if you stayed at the Grand Hotel, and then there is the 501c4, which effectively everyone knows to be the slush fund, essentially. That there's no transparency. It'll only say that Senator McBroom spent $20,000 for travel. It didn't say that Senator McBroom went to the Grand Hotel and took his wife, and I mean, not that you would ever do that, but
I couldn't raise $20,000 if I wanted to.
I'd throw your wife into this, and she's sitting here. But nonetheless, and I think you owe her a trip to the Grand Hotel now. Why do we still have this system? Why do we have two systems? And what can be done about it?
Yeah, I've looked a lot into this particular problem, and a lot of it has to do with just the federal tax code for nonprofits and how right now basically the Michigan State Legislature members, others in the executive branch have found that there's this basically loophole in the federal tax code. And I think we desperately need the federal government to set up some new parameters and shunt these kind of political nonprofit accounts into a different system than all your other traditional nonprofit accounts that are used for educational purposes and things. Until that's happened, I'm not totally sure what we can do, although you and I have talked. I've talked with Senator Moss. We do have some ideas about forcing disclosure. I'm not sure if they would pass eventually through a court decision, but I think they are worth trying to do. We certainly need it.
Yeah, Senator Moss, couldn't the Michigan legislature just pass a bill that says these federally governed organizations, if they are associated with a member of this body or a statewide official, that they have to disclose through the Campaign Finance Act?
So we're butting against some federal rules and laws that we're trying to figure out what's the path forward. We've talked about this to see what we can achieve. But I think the premise of your question is absolutely right. There's way too much dark money in Lansing. And we need to figure out ways to shine a light on it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant to ethics breaches and scandals and questions. And so I'm in favor of anything that we can figure out how to make sure that there's more exposure and more accountability for all the various fundraising vehicles that a legislator could utilize.
One of the things I'm working on is, can we limit the participation in donations to campaigns from state-sponsored monopolies? particularly from our utilities and from other monopolies, maybe from our universities and others. I think that there's a tremendous amount of undue influence that happens to both parties then that directs our ability to have good policy discussions. And I'd really like to see us do something about that. That's another thing that we've been working on. We're both running out of time, so we have to start now planning who are we going to pass these goals on to.
Yeah.
That seems like a big one to go after DTE and consumers.
Well, you know, I would think they should support it. I mean, I don't know
So
that
they have to spend shareholder money? Or
why should they want to do that? I mean,
ratepayer
they do
money.
it for survival, but is it really the greatest thing for our system? I don't think so.
Yeah. What do you think of, I mean, just on that front, what do you think of how the utility companies advertise? They do a lot of advertising, and yet they are a monopoly. You can't change your electric provider unless you're one of the 10%.
Yeah.
But those seats never open up at that theater.
I'm in the UP. I don't even have DTE and consumers available to me. I'm stuck with somebody else, so I can't answer. I have never seen these ads.
There are a lot of them.
Yes. Finally, back to FOIA. What do you think is still the fundamental hurdle to get Speaker Matt Hall on board with this? Because he has just showed no interest in FOIA. Even though he voted for it, I think.
He has voted for it. I think it aligns with the ethics stuff that he's putting forward. I've heard intimations that we take up House ethics plans, he'll take up Senate ethics plans. Don't threaten me with a good time. I'm fine with all of it.
Yeah.
So no, I think that the more that our friends who depend on FOIA, both people in the media, both citizens who are looking for information from their government, continue to make a case for this, I hope there's movement. The sad reality is all the scandals out of Lansing have probably made the best case for this. So if we really want to uphold ethics and good governance, this is one of the biggest and most effective tools to do it. So the only people who want less transparency in government benefit from less transparency in government. And I'm confident that Speaker Hall does not want that to be his legacy.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Matt Hall's a deal maker. I think he supports it. I don't even think he's opposed to it. He's just looking to put his best opportunity for his caucus and for his chamber forward, and when that time comes, he'll execute.
Yeah, we did find out about that $4,500 coffee maker via FOIA.
Yeah.
So we look forward to trying to find out if you guys have gotten any $4,500 coffee makers.
I don't drink coffee.
I don't drink coffee.
How do these two guys survive? Well, in our final,
We're always tired.
Yes, our final 3 minutes here. What is one issue you want to get done besides FOIA right now? What's one issue you want to get done before year's end, before we get back into an election cycle? And I ask this in context that you're both term limited and you're running for Congress now, so you probably got a mark on your back. But let's start with Senator McBroom.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of bills that I've worked on over the last 15 years. I still have a huge passion for more good government, ways to make the government work better. I've been suggesting a reform to the State Board of Education. I've got a constitutional amendment to change the 3 universities that have the only elected boards in the whole country over to appointed systems that our governor could do. There's a lot of other changes. Fixes to immediate effect, which you know is an anachronism in our Constitution that desperately needs to be fixed because it's abused. Those are all things I'm very passionate about, want to do. And then, of course, there's UP-centric things with wildlife management and things that I'm also big on. And the last thing I'll talk about is education. I'm just really big on seeing more education opportunities for skilled trades, for our high school students to have more flexibility in their life choices. So those are my projects.
Well, we don't want to put the viewers to sleep on a media effect
How
here.
did I take so long for that? I'm
That's
sorry.
all right.
Oh, that's okay. Final 10 seconds, Senator McBroom.
Strengthening our price gouging law. If I'm closing out some of my projects in the legislature, obviously running for Congress, looking to continue some of my work. Michigan's price gouging law is very weak, and I've been trying to strengthen it over the years.
Our lemon law, too.
And we almost got it done last session.
All right, well, thank you very much, Senator Jeremy Moss and Senator Ed McBroom.
That's a good one.
I'm Chad Livingood with the Detroit News. Thank you for tuning into this session here.
Well, thank you both. Very, very informative, and I know Michiganders are on your side when they want to expand transparency in Michigan. And I know Chad's on your side too. So
On
keep
that
asking,
issue.
keep asking the speaker about it. You're helping us out.
My name is Brad Williams. This is live from Mackinac, hosted by DTE Energy. We've had a great program all week with leaders from across the state. Right now, we're gonna talk a little bit about one of the top issues that's on the mind of everyone here at the conference, the state budget. As we all know, the budget has grown over the last few years with an influx of federal money and rising tax revenues. But that also causes some challenges in a year like this, where tax revenues have stayed relatively flat. So we're going to have on the stage here in just a moment Senator Sarah Anthony from Lansing, who is the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, as well as Representative Greg Van Workum from Muskegon. Representative Van Workum serves on the House Appropriations Committee. No budget gets done in Michigan without good communication and good partnership between the two branches of the legislature, as well as the governor's office. So let's learn more about where we stand, and I'll give it back to Chad and our two guests.
I am joined by Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony and Greg Van Workum, State Representative from West Michigan, who chairs one of the House Higher Ed. Is that higher ed or which appropriations?
Medicaid and behavioral health.
Medicaid and behavioral health. I apologize, so I'm blanking out here, but so yeah, let's start with Medicaid. Okay, right now this is a big one right now. What changes does the Senate budget do to Medicaid that the House Republicans are claiming it's going to knock 60,000 people off of Medicaid?
Yeah, nothing. So first of all, for folks who don't understand the budget process, we build our budgets typically based on January numbers, based on the revenue that we currently have in place. And then after May, we adjust those numbers together between the governor's team, the House, and the Senate. And so the adjustments would go across the board, whether we're talking about the DHHS budget, road funding, all of it is based on the latest numbers. So a collective exercise under normal times would look at what's happening at the federal level related to Medicaid and every other issue in the state budget and then adjust accordingly. Unfortunately, we're not able to start that exercise because our friends in the House have yet to send over real budgets, real numbers that we can start to adjust together.
Representative Van Workum, to start with that, why has the House not passed a budget in the traditional sense yet?
So we're taking a deliberate approach this year. We've got a lot of new members. We're looking at what the trifecta did the past term and kind of unraveling that. As you may have seen, I'm on the Medicaid and behavioral health budget. We've put actually 3 different people as chairs in the DHH budget because we're just looking at taking a harder, deeper dive into what has been passed last term and what we want to do this term. So it's a different process, but we wanted to see what the correct numbers would be in May so that we could adjust and take a deeper dive and take a look at what's all in this budget, what's been created the past terms. And there's a concern of where the state is. If we are going to go into recession or have less money come in, that we wanted to take a more deliberative approach than the standard process of passing something before the CREC came out.
How do you all arrive at this number that their budget is going to cut Medicaid for 60,000 people?
So we, as somebody that's doing the Medicaid budget, for the past 5 months, we hear all this doom and gloom about Medicaid and what the federal government's going to do. And even the Senate had a hearing on it. The governor put out a report on it of just kind of putting this scare out there of what's going to happen to Medicaid. And as I'm seeing it, it's not actually coming into fruition of what they are talking about. There's going to be some work requirements possibly if the feds actually pass a budget. It's not this thing that's been put out of all these cuts that are going to happen. And then, as the good senator was saying, they passed a budget that didn't adjust for the what the actuarial studies say is going to be the rate for Medicaid. So that number doesn't match what the actuaries are saying. That's the discussion right now we're having as it relates to a supplemental of what the actual dollars were and what actually needs to be there. So it's a lot about what's happening on the Medicaid population affects what the state budget is.
And I'll also say, just to like cut to the chase, even the Detroit News just recently reported that the House put out a resolution that had those fake numbers around these drastic cuts to Medicaid and how the Senate's budget would rob Michiganders and put us in a deficit. Fundamentally just false. That it was just full of misinformation, and I think that ultimately, as we now get closer and closer to a July 1 deadline, we have to stop having concepts of plans or internal discussions. We have to get in a room. And in the last few years, what we have been able to do is pass bipartisan budgets that have been balanced because we've worked together. And yes, we were of the same party, but to be clear, I've been in those rooms. We didn't agree on everything. We didn't get everything right, but we had the courage to work things out together and not posture in a way that has been unproductive. And with so much uncertainty at the federal level, I hear from everyone, all walks of life, all across the state, just get in a room and start working it through. But we can't point to any specifics right now because we don't have anything to react to. So I appreciate the deliberations, and I just ask our colleagues in the House to deliberate faster, to read faster, to work on solutions with us and not just poke holes at concepts that we've put forward. The governor's team has done it. The Senate has done it. There is literally no excuse.
I think discussions are happening. They're still having discussions.
Well, I'm the Senate Appropriations Chair. No one discusses.
I think that's why do a conference like this. There's lots of discussions that are happening. There's lots of points of differences. There's things that are happening. Whether it's the front and center of having a bill and going piece by piece, that's another conversation. But we're still working on budget and the process that's moving forward.
But getting back to the federal tax bill, one big beautiful bill, as the president's calling it, the most latest analysis is that there's almost $2 billion impact to the state of Michigan. I mean, that's out of 17 billion general fund, roughly. I mean, how would we possibly make that up? We have
to start working together, right? The first thing is to look at specific numbers, get in a room, and figure out what our priorities are. If we were just to look at it, all of the concepts that the House has put forward, you would think that roads and law enforcement would be the only things we need to do in the state. But the reality is that when we look at the whole that will be left in our budget, here at the state level, we have to start making at least modest gains towards addressing everything else in our budget. I mean, we're sitting here at the Mackinac Policy Conference. We have the business community, we have the higher ed community here, and yet the concepts that we have to point to from the House is gutting our business attraction lines, looking at higher ed, and instead of funding both operations as well as scholarships, trying to rebrand, things that we've already done. Ultimately, if we want to have real discussions of ways that we safeguard people, safeguard healthcare, as well as make sure we're competitive in terms of business attraction tools and educating our kids, it starts with having a real budget on the table. So all we have to point to is concepts of plans, and I think our people deserve more. The business community that we're here with, they need predictability, they need stability. But when we point to gutting incentives, gutting all of our tools, we cannot disarm in this moment. But again, when there's uncertainty, you feel it. I think folks feel it even at this conference. Yeah. People feel like there is just no predictability right now, and that's a dangerous place to be.
So you're touching on the House Republican road plan that has get rid of SOAR, the I call cash for jobs incentives, and then also get rid of the mega tax credits, which is about $500 to $600 million a year in refunds that go predominantly to 3 automakers in Southeast Michigan. What's the case for keeping them? Because Republicans are just framing this as this is corporate welfare giveaways, and we'd love to have a campaign argument about that next year.
And look, I'm not like the biggest SOAR proponent, right? I think that we do need incentives, we do need tools to make sure that we're still competitive. but let's get in a room and rebrand it. Let's talk about what's working and what's not. The reality is that SOAR was never perfect. It's something that we had one-time federal funding that could prop up our economic tools. But if it's not working anymore, let's get to the table and find out something new. But I think small businesses and large businesses can agree that we do need some supports from the state in order to continue to be competitive. But again, without specifics, I don't know what the House actually wants to do with that.
Representative, does SOAR need to be rebranded?
I don't think SOAR, just putting a different sticker on it is going to help what SOAR has done. We haven't seen the success that it was sold to us as. I think SOAR is definitely on the table of relooking at how we do economic development in the state. And we've been burned enough times on what's been promised and what's actually been delivered. That's why that's on the table right now.
It's on the menu.
On the menu.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Yeah.
Nothing's on the table right now because they're not engaging. So yeah.
Okay, so what's it going to take to get you all to start trying to work on a deal? I mean, school districts are looking for some direction by July 1. They got to hire teachers. They got to make contractual deals with teachers, pay raises, bonuses, all the things, the functions of a business of schools. They need to do it in a 2-month period before kids come back around Labor Day. So are you all going to get the K-12 budget done before July 1st?
I try to remind everyone that everything has to be negotiated by the three, by the executive, the House, and the Senate. 2 of the 3 legs have presented balanced school aid budgets, and we're waiting to make those decisions. But the House can't comport itself to say it's my way or the highway, that you have to do it this way or we won't engage. That's what toddlers do. I cannot negotiate with unreasonable actors, and so I live in Lansing, so I'm always in the Capitol. So I am ready to start negotiating. I will sit in a room alone if I have to, but I have to look superintendents in the eye. I have to look at principals and teachers who are looking for predictability. And right now, they can point to real investments in our budget. They have nothing to point to from the House.
Representative?
So I don't think unreasonable is quite accurate. We put out a proposal on the close of books, which wasn't settled when we left last term. So we put out the close of books that put a per pupil foundation allowance out there, saying this is where we're going to go. And I saw the speaker mention it yesterday as well of what we want to do. And
you want to get rid of
it was actually my bill that put the July 1st deadline, as you may recall.
Yes.
After
the meltdown of 2017 or 19.
That's right.
Yes,
so I put it was my bill that did the July 1st. So I'm all about the good governance. I recognize that the schools have their fiscal year on July 1st. I'd love to see something for the schools on July 1st. That's why we put in there a foundation allowance so they had the base when we put the close of books bill out there.
Do we need to change the fiscal years so the state is aligned with the school districts?
I'm open to whatever's going to work. This is what I'll say, though, and I appreciated your bill related to July 1. I like to actually follow the law. So it would be nice if we could actually get in a room in order to meet that July 1 deadline. But again, until we have not statements, not press conferences, not concepts, but actual numbers to start working through, unfortunately, the leadership that our education community is seeking from us, we can't get to that place if we're not willing to engage.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, Senator, is Speaker Hall calls you the ultimate Lansing insider. I don't know if this is because you live in Lansing or that you actually are a Lansing insider. What do you make of this sort of name calling? Or
My mama taught me not to call people names, so I won't return the volley, but I'm from Lansing. I'm born and raised in the community. I think there was just a survey that said that I think Speaker Hall amongst Lansing insiders is the most popular. So I don't engage in those kind of childish games, but I've tried to build a reputation for being a serious policymaker, someone that can work across the aisle and get a deal done. And so regardless if he thinks I'm one of the good old boys, I would think differently.
Representative Van Workum, is there, before we get to the next election cycle, which is, seems like it's coming soon, or
They always do.
if not already here, what is something outside of the budget? What's a priority for you want to get passed?
That's a great question. I've been spending so much time on the Medicaid behavioral health budget that it's tough to pick your head up out and look on the policy stuff. But last term, I was pretty effective on economic development bills, the R&D tax credit,
Yep.
the entrepreneurship program. From being in the minority of a trifecta, I was still able to get some things accomplished. One of the things I'm looking at is the ballot process. And it's not one that's talked a lot, but
The what?
of getting a ballot proposal up and the
Yeah.
signatures and what these proposals have become. I find a lot of times when I come back after an election, it's cleaning up some of these ballot proposals that have come by. And Michigan is just a target-rich area because it's easy to get on the ballot here in Michigan. And I think we need to take a look at that and what that process is because of some of the issues that have come up because of whether these proposals have been properly vetted over time. So taking a look at that, we'll see if we come up with something.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, but I really appreciate it. State Representative Greg Van Workum and Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hopefully you all can just figure out this budget here in the next few weeks.
Let's go on the porch. Let's figure it out. All right.
Okay, I'm
Thank
Chad
you.
Live and go to the Detroit News. Thank you.
Well, thank you to both of you, Senator, Representative. Thank you, Chad. You've done your duty for this conference. We are going to welcome in a new moderator for our last two sessions. Paul Miller is the morning host at WPHM from Port Huron. And Paul is here every year emphasizing the importance of this conference, not just for folks in Metro Detroit, but across the state. So we're happy to have Paul here. His first guest is going to be Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. Lieutenant Governor is serving his 7th year as Lieutenant Governor, was chosen by Governor Whitmer to be his running mate. He's also the tallest Lieutenant Governor that we've ever had. Certainly could post up his predecessor, Lieutenant Governor Calley. So we are ecstatic to have him. I should also add about the Lieutenant Governor, he is a candidate to come after Governor Whitmer. Certainly a strong candidate both in the Democratic primary and should he advance past that in the general election. So Paul, Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to let you guys take it away here for a few minutes.
All right, Brad, thank you very much. Lieutenant Governor, great to see you again.
Thanks, Brad. Good to be here with you.
So much for us to talk about in a short time. Of all the things we're about to talk about, what's the most important to you? What's the most important issue facing Michigan in your eyes?
I mean, I've spent time talking to people all across Michigan. I've been to all 83 counties in Michigan 3 or more times. And what I hear from people is an urgent need for results on housing, on health care, especially mental health, on education, on prices and jobs. And so I think that, here at this conference with all these decision makers, we need to be about how we get more results more quickly in those areas because look, the people of Michigan, they're hungry for people who are going to make things happen. And they think they need problem solvers, they need solution builders. They don't need people who are just going to, talk trash and make noise, but people who can get things done. And I think, I've been the kind of leader to do that, to deliver on those issues, on housing, on helping now. I just announced yesterday something called the Housing Tax Increment Financing Tool and how it's going to help one of our home builders increase their output, the number of units they bring online, by 30% a year for the next 10 years. Because we gave them a flexible tool and a policy that can deliver housing in the places all across the state of Michigan. And so that's the kind of leadership I think we need, results-oriented, values-driven, responsive to the needs of people of Michigan. And frankly, that's what engineers do. We solve problems. We fix systems that don't work for people, and that's what I'm going to do.
You mentioned housing, also health care. How quickly can we affect some change in health care?
Well, first and foremost, we have changes that we need to do everything we can to fight against. This reconciliation bill in Washington, a bill that every single Republican member of our congressional delegation voted for, guts Medicaid. I mean, we're talking about a bill that 24% of people in Michigan get their health care from it. That means pregnant women and children who are served by that program. Someone like John James, who voted to get 182,000 people could be kicked off of their health insurance, I think that's really problematic. So we have to make sure, one, that we can try to do everything to protect that from not happening, and I hope the Senate, and I know our senators are going to do everything they can to make sure they protect people's health care. But we also have to deliver on healthcare solutions that we hear people of Michigan clamoring for. And in my conversations, I talk to people, in every conversation, they talk about mental health. They talk about wanting health for adults and children. I met with the state championship high school football team, Cass Tech High School in Detroit. And when I met with these young men in the Capitol, they said to me that they were worried about their friends' mental health.
Wow.
So I'm really proud to have worked with Senator Debbie Stabenow in her last year in office to bring online in Michigan something called the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic Program, CCBHCs. These serve people regardless of their ability to pay, regardless of whether or not they have insurance. They're like urgent care for mental health. What they do, we've opened up 40 of them across the state of Michigan, and we're scaling up our capacity in a way that, frankly, we have not in at least a generation in the state of Michigan. So when I heard about a problem, I went and found a tool to deliver a solution, and that's, I think, what problem solvers do, and that's what people of Michigan actually want.
I want to spend just a moment talking about education. Our next panel is going to be on education, but K-12 education obviously is suffering in Michigan. Why, and how can we fix it?
Well, this is something that is clear and present and urgent for me. I have school-aged children who are in Detroit public schools right now. My baby girl is finishing kindergarten. My twin 11-year-olds are finishing the 6th grade. This is not a theoretical exercise for me or the families of Michigan, or frankly, the businesses who represented at this conference who need to have talented and credentialed Michiganders coming in the pipeline to build the businesses and economy of tomorrow. So I also know it's true that if you talk to any teacher, that teacher will tell you exactly what needs to happen for the kids in their classroom to learn how to read. What we need to do is remove the barriers that stand between those education professionals and doing the things that they know work. And also the things that force them to do things that don't. So we need to make it easier for them to pivot to the things that do. Now, we've done a lot of work over these last 6 years. Since Governor Whitmer and I have been in office, we have led the largest funding for K-12 public education in the history of the state of Michigan every single year. And this year we look to eclipse $10,000 per student. We've dealt with the inequities that were introduced by Proposal A. We closed those gaps between the districts where people are living in poverty and the districts where people are super wealthy. We've done that work. And now we're going to be laser focused on delivering better outcomes so that every parent and every household can experience what I experienced when I overheard my baby girl sound out words independently for the first time. It is the sweetest music anybody will ever play. And I want that experience for everyone in Michigan.
You mentioned earlier the House reconciliation bill. It has major impacts in Michigan beyond just the proposed cuts to Medicaid. What other ways will that affect the state?
I mean, look, it's cruel. It's corrupt. And I don't want to run past the fact that they want people to die faster. That is the result of taking health care from people. So we need to stand tall and strong against that, to be clear. But I'm also concerned about access to any number of services, building on top of the destruction of the DOGE cuts to things like the VA, which we have been firing people who work at the VA in Michigan. Look, my father-in-law, all right? My father-in-law voted for Donald Trump, and he gets his VA services as a Vietnam vet at the Ann Arbor VA hospital. Well, I went and stood with others who were protesting the cuts to that hospital that would let go of his doctor, who he's settled on over a number of years. So I think, there's so many Michiganders and so many important things that are at stake. And this kind of chaos and calamity and instability from Washington, it's bad for Michigan's economy. It's bad for Michigan families. It raises prices. It does nothing good for our people. And so that's why we got to fight against it.
Lieutenant Governor, we're in a prolonged period of political infighting. How do we move beyond that? How do we get two sides together at the table?
I have been really proud that, again, serving with Governor Whitmer, my record of achievement with legislation has been overwhelmingly bipartisan. I will work together to solve problems with people. Anyone who is serious about solutions is someone I'm ready to work with. And so I think we have an opportunity to come to the table and say, let's actually focus on the people of Michigan and our families and what they need to see Michigan as a place where they have a future, where they can stay and succeed. So I think we have to be focused on those goals. And once we get away from actually listening to people and instead playing politics, that's where the division comes in. But solutions are always going to come from the people. And that's why I've spent so much time with them. And that's how I learned what the priorities should be. And so I don't get caught up in the games. And it's about making clear what our priorities are, what the choices we have before us. And yeah, when something's bad, we got to call it bad. When something's dangerous, we got to call it dangerous. But when there's an opportunity, we have to step up and seize it, and that's what I'm willing to do.
As you travel around the state of Michigan, you're introducing and reintroducing yourself to Michiganders. How do you do that? What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I want them to know that my first job is husband, my second job is father before I was a public servant. But I want them to know that I'm a person who's about action and solutions and getting things done. I'm an engineer. What we do is we make systems work for people when they don't work. I learned how to solve problems, and we have a lot of complex things we have to address. But complex problems are problems that need to be broken down, and then we need to find the solutions to them. And so I want them to know that I'm a person who's willing to put in the work, who will come and sit with you and listen to you and learn from you and understand what our opportunities are. I also want them to know that I get that there are things that we are anxious about going forward. I understand that the way the technology is evolving and what artificial intelligence is going to mean for our education system and our economy, that can be intimidating to people. But I'm a software developer. I understand this technology. I understand what these companies are trying to do and what they're trying to build. And frankly, I think Michigan needs a leader who can navigate those waters alongside Michiganders, so we can make Michigan a leader in this space. We take advantage of this technology rather than this technology taking advantage of us. So I want them to know that I'm a person who's going to walk with them into that future, because my vision for the future is big enough to include all of us in the state of Michigan. I think that's a difference. Some people don't see everybody in the future or that kind of possibility, but I do, and I want everyone to know they can stay here in Michigan and succeed in Michigan, or they can come here in Michigan and grow here.
What are the biggest opportunities that the state has right now?
There are so many. I mean, I'm proud. So earlier today, for example, I announced an amazing investment from DTE and consumers to invest $3.5 billion additional dollars in their Michigan-based supply chains. That is because we have a chance to build a clean energy economy, the likes of which the Midwest and maybe America has never seen. We're the #1 state in the country for clean energy sector job growth. That's because we set an ambitious goal, and now our private sector partners are stepping up to meet it and growing those supply chains, encouraging entrepreneurs who are in the clean energy space to invest in Michigan and put their ideas into the world in Michigan. That is a huge opportunity for us to create the jobs of tomorrow, good paying jobs, and these companies that are going to grow. We're going to hire people. Setting up centers for excellence like the Freshwater Research and Innovation Center that I spearheaded the funding for at the state government level, that's going to establish in Traverse City, and is going to make the place that has 21% of the fresh water on the planet. It's going to make Michigan, however, the best to manage that water, the best at marine autonomy, the best at marine electrification, the best at fish and wildlife management. Like, we should be excellent, and we can be. These are tremendous opportunities for our state. And then the last thing is, when I graduated from the University of Michigan, I graduated degrees in computer engineering and computer science. I wanted to be a software developer. And in 2005, I thought I had to leave Michigan to pursue that career. We have invested in things like the Michigan Innovation Fund, the Economic Opportunity Fund, the Small Business Venture Capital Program. I've worked to change the reality for raising money for growing businesses in Michigan so that people with ideas know they can thrive here. And that's what we need to do even more of going forward.
Some of those clean energy projects you talked about, how do you get local communities to buy into that when they don't necessarily want a wind farm or a solar farm in their backyard?
I'll tell you the conversation I've been having with farmers all across Michigan, including farmers in Sanilac County. So we have a lot of folks who are getting a bit older, who've been farming in their land for generations, but they may have kids who are not interested in carrying that practice forward. They worry about what's going to happen with the future of their family, their business, and their farm. Well, I think what we're offering is an opportunity for folks to have an additional way to make money and build revenue on that land through a clean energy project. We provided a pathway to make that true and make it economically viable. When I've had that conversation with those farmers, they see it as maybe this is a chance to do something that can sustain this land and keep it in our family and keep building the wealth that we've been accumulating over generations. They've seen that as an exciting opportunity. So what we're doing is creating more pathways to success, prosperity, and opportunity for people in Michigan. And this clean energy future can be a part of it.
Lieutenant Governor, I know that you love a good sports analogy.
I do.
So, using a sports analogy, how would you describe where Michigan is now and how we can be a winner?
Look, I used to play basketball. You're shocking. Brad joked about me being able to post up Brian Cowley. That would be really easy.
I'd love to see that.
But no, you wouldn't. but I think about we're in the NBA playoffs. So if you're a scorer in basketball, you actually don't care what the defense does. You recognize what your strengths are and what the spots are on the court, that if you get to your spot, you're going to score. That's what I think about for Michigan. We have so many assets. We have more engineers and engineering talent than any place else in the country. We have 21% of the world's fresh water. We have these amazing natural resources that we are blessed to steward. We have some of the most innovative and inventive companies in the world. We have 4 R1 research universities that are some of the best on the planet. These assets, if we can align and deploy them for the issues that matter going forward, if we can make sure that Michigan manufacturers are poised to make the things that matter going forward, if we do what we need to do, if we get to our spot, we will score and we will win as the state of Michigan. That's what I think we need to think about.
What at this conference has really energized you? What has you excited as you spend time here at the Mackinac Policy Conference?
I mean, I'm always inspired by entrepreneurs. I'm a 2-time recovering entrepreneur myself. I started and sold 2 software businesses in my career. But, since we talked about education earlier, I'm inspired by the parents who are here to advocate for strong improvements in K-12 education. Because again, we have to lay this foundation for the future, for all of the career and technical education that we can fund, and we funded it to the level that no one else has in the history of the state of Michigan. More registered apprenticeships than we've had in a year. We're the #1 state for adult educational credential attainment now, certainly in our region, if not the country. But we have to have kids on a strong foundation to be able to get there, to participate in those programs. And so I'm excited about those parents bringing that sort of message to these decision makers, and I hope they listen to them.
A lot of conversation about problems, but a lot of opportunities too, aren't there?
That's right.
All right, Lieutenant Governor, thanks so much.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it very
me.
much.
Good to see
All
you,
right.
Paul.
You too.
Paul and Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for this conversation. I also want to thank our sponsor, DTE Energy, who is bringing you live from Mackinac all week. We are heading into our final session of this program. For many of us who are watching, might be the most important session. K-12 education is top of mind, not just for parents, but future parents, for grandparents, for aunts and uncles. They want to ensure that our kids can be best prepared for college, trade school, whatever's next. And that K-12 education is going to be critical to that. We all understand that our reading and literacy scores here in Michigan aren't where they want to be or aren't where we want them. But there's no shortage of people who are working together to make that happen. So for our last panel tonight, I want to recognize Vanessa Kessler from Launch Michigan, a great nonprofit organization that has been working across the aisle to find solutions that everybody can and should be able to get behind. She's joined by Senator Dana Polhanke from Livonia, who is the chair of the Senate Education Committee and also a former teacher, so has a keen insight into what's going on in the classroom and what the solutions may be. So Paul, take it away. Look forward to this conversation.
Brad, thank you very much, and good afternoon to both of you.
Good afternoon.
Senator, I want to start with you. How did we get where we are? And then, of course, the follow-up is how do we get out of this situation? But how has Michigan sunk so low in education?
Well, I'm going to reject part of the
Okay.
premise, and that is grade 4 reading specifically has been stagnant. I saw former Governor Snyder over there. That's as far back as our NAEP scores, the national scorecard, goes to the beginning of his administration. And our scores have stayed relatively stagnant, where other states have shown improvements. So when you get to grade 8 and the math, we see a different story. So all of education isn't in the crapper.
Right.
It's grade 4 reading where we're struggling a little bit. That's what happened. And since I'm a Democrat, and we enjoyed 2 years of a Democratic trifecta in which we passed legislation for dyslexia kids, but not just for dyslexic kids, that is going to completely overhaul how we teach reading in the early grades. Reading is a science. It's phonics based. You and I, and maybe you, Vanessa, learn to read based on phonics. We got away from that for a couple decades, and it didn't work. So we're going back to phonics-based instruction, and we're doing things like lowering class sizes in K-3 schools, especially in high poverty districts. So they have no more than 17 or 18 kids in a classroom for a teacher. So these are proven, whole-scale, systemic approaches that I believe it'll take some time, but that are going to completely transform those particular scores that we want to see improve.
Vanessa, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I appreciate everything Senator Opelhanki just brought up and the work that the state has done around literacy. I think that the focus on the focus we've just shifted to with the right training for all teachers. One of the things that Michigan has a problem with at the education level is we have a system level problem. And we've heard about it a lot here at the conference. It's been brought up. It's not a people problem. The educators are working really hard, but our system has made some choices over the past 20, 30 years that have not helped us escalate. So one is making sure that we invest in and focus on literacy. And again, we've made great I think we're poised to accelerate. The other thing Launch Michigan really points out is we need to rethink what it means to graduate from a K-12 system in Michigan. Our standards are preparing kids maybe for the jobs of the past, not the jobs of the future. And we know that kids are disconnected, they're disengaged, and they're not ready for their next steps. But we can shift. We can identify those future-ready skills. We can commit to that as a state. It's a bipartisan issue. I've heard everybody at the conference talking about it. So the time is now for us to set that new goal for every Michigan student and, make those changes.
There's also the issue of accountability. How do we measure how successful a school or a teacher or a student is? And is that something that needs to be addressed, Senator?
I think we over-test students. If you have a kid in school, they're doing their NWA testing 3 times a year. And then if they're in 11th grade, they're doing as much as 31 hours of testing. It's too much. I'll say this right now, it's a little bit controversial, but I wouldn't mind phasing the M-step out and using our very good benchmark assessments that the Read by Grade 3 law requires that we use, like things like NWA testing, iReady, there's different brands. So the accountability and the data is better than we've ever had before. We have a parent dashboard that was created with parents in mind, and parents have access to how their schools are doing. We've got a strong, still robust teacher evaluation system. So the accountability is strong. I will reject a premise that says it's not. If anything, we need to phase out some of the testing that is not having the results we need.
Yeah. Your thoughts on that, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think accountability is can be such a difficult conversation. And Dr. Vitti said on the stage yesterday, for every kind of ounce of accountability, you need an ounce of support. And Michigan hasn't always done that. Sometimes we've had 20 ounces of accountability and 0 ounces of support. But you can't have support without accountability. And so again, kind of thinking about systems, we also have historically held teachers accountable and schools accountable, but we haven't asked what's the state's responsibility? What is the department's responsibility? What is business doing? What is philanthropy doing? So if we're going to transform our system, we need a broader reciprocal accountability framework that makes sure all those supports are in place and we agree on the goals we're getting to. We have also had a lot of moving targets about what goal we're trying to get to, so it's hard to show success when you're not sure what you're shooting for. So I think if we could pick some clear goals and name them and then say what's everybody's responsibility at every layer of the system. Education is a statewide issue. It's not just for educators. It's a talent issue. It's a parent issue. It's a community issue. but we often don't include all those stakeholders in the accountability. We make it only about teachers or about leaders, and it's really on all of us as Michiganders.
You look at other states that have improved their scores. Mississippi has come up quite often as one that went from worst, not worst to first, but certainly in the top 10. How can Michigan replicate that, or do we need to try and replicate what other states are doing?
You have to be careful when you take a look at state scores. It kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. The states who have a third grade read or flunk law, which I personally repealed the flunking portion of it. All the studies prove that it doesn't work long term. What it does do is takes your worst readers out of the testing system and gives them a bunch of literacy supports. So the low readers are being held back from fourth grade. So what you see is, I think, inflated test scores sometimes because the low readers were held back. It's a gaming of the testing system. So there's that most people aren't aware of. But longitudinally, I don't know how I got on the read or flunk portion of the third grade reading law, doesn't work.
Yeah.
So right now, what we did is we kept all the literacy supports for the third grade reading law, got rid of the narrow read or flunk portion, and I think we're on the track to do some good stuff.
Yeah. The Mississippi Miracle, Michigan's doing a lot of pieces of it. The one thing that they're doing that we're not, I would say, but we are poised to with the most recent efforts is making sure instructional practice is shifting to that science of reading that the senator talked about, and that every elementary teacher is trained in that. So Mississippi requires training for every single elementary teacher. Michigan tends to be more, let everybody kind of do what they want. And this is one place where we need to get more specific. We know it works, we know we need it. It's what other states are doing. And it's a great model. I was with some teachers in Grand Rapids a couple weeks ago, and they said, I didn't ask, this was not a seed question. They said, I wish I was trained in science of reading or how to teach reading. I'm teaching sixth grade math, but my kids need help reading, and I don't have the skills. So it's one of our most powerful levers, and we can build on the investments, the infrastructure. Like, there's a lot of good things. We should not discount, we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We should not discount what Michigan's done in literacy. We should stay the course and add this focus on practice and training for educators.
Have we put too much emphasis on STEM and not enough on literacy?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we can do, it's all of the above.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned teachers, they're hardworking. I know a lot of teachers. Do we need to pay them more?
Absolutely. We don't make a lot as a state senator, but I made more in this job with a somewhat modest salary for, having a master's degree than I did after almost 20 years of teaching. So the pay is abysmal. It's hard to stay motivated. Had a lot of friends who were ship shoppers or auto mechanics or doing DoorDash or painting during the summer, painting the schools. So no, we absolutely do not pay teachers what they're worth commensurate with their levels of education, most of whom have master's degrees.
Yeah, have to agree. That's another structural thing that Michigan faced in the last 15 years. We had a epidemic level of teacher shortage. It was a crisis, and part of that is disinvestment from the profession, disrespect for the profession. So the state's made a lot of investments into getting people back into the pipeline, and we're seeing early results. Like we're starting to get more candidates, more people coming in, but we still have a retention problem. They are not staying, and we need them to stay. And we know that a huge factor for educators is pay. And if we value this as a position in our system, we need to increase our pay. And again, we can look at what other states, we can look at models, differentiated pay for high needs areas. There's really things that are working, but it is really important. They're our greatest source of talent in education, and we need to support them.
May I highlight something I'm really proud of? So Senator Camilleri and I have worked through the Senate's budget proposal, and in our proposal, there would be a $400 per pupil increase. Well, our budget mandates that 50% of that would have to be used, of the increase, would have to be used for teacher pay. because I'm talking to my teachers at little events and things, and I'm like, how do you like that historic funding we've given you? And they're like, what funding? It hasn't reached the teachers' pockets yet. So we may have to be a little more heavy-handed with that. I think it's a great idea.
Well, it goes to show that there are a lot of needs in our schools, and
Correct.
so you can give a school more money, and they're not going to give it to the teachers not because they don't care about the teachers, but they have to fix the leaky roof or improve the library or technology.
That's right.
Yeah. You sound a lot more optimistic about the state of education than what I've been hearing up here. How come?
Because I look at the scores and I understand how to read data. Let me just say something. When it bothers me when we say our third and fourth graders can't read. They can read. It's just they're tested on very complex, for them, texts, T-E-X-T-S. If you took the SAT right now, the reading version, you would not score 100%. I got one wrong when I took it. I'm an excellent reader. I have a master's degree in it. Anyone here would struggle because it's a very hard test, but you all know how to read. So there's a lot of a premise that I just don't agree with. The kids can read, okay, but the M-STEP especially is a tough test, and it measures proficiency. And you can't compare kids in the same year, whereas something like the benchmark test that I said I'd like to see, you can compare kids to the rest of the country, you can find out their grade level with that. So I think the M-STEP has some limitations. But our kids, it's not that they can't read. Right. They can't read this water bottle. That's not accurate.
Where's your level of optimism?
I think it's really important to be honest about what we're not doing well in the system, and I think the conversation is broader than test scores.
Sure.
Again, we don't have a clear standard. We need to update what it means to graduate. Yeah. We need to fully and equitably fund the system, and we need to make sure everybody in the system is working toward the same goals. So those things can need work, and we don't have to be stuck in pessimism or the fights at the back. We've heard up here a lot of call to bipartisanship. We're a purple state. We're get her done. Let's be about change. So I think we all are on board with we need to make some changes. I feel like I've been in state ed policy conversations for 20 years in this state, and there's more agreement that there's changes to be made and more agreement about what those changes are. So we should find the places we agree and make those changes and not get caught bickering about, how bad is it or how good could it be, but let's do some practical changes, like the standard, like making sure teachers are trained, like fully funding the system.
What's your number one priority on that list of changes?
We made the science of reading into law, and my number one priority for this year is small classroom sizes for K through 3 kids.
Senator Vanessa, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Senator Vanessa, thank you so much for your time today and the important conversation. As the parent of a smart, talented, and athletic 15-year-old is top of mind for me. And Paul, thank you for being our host for these last 2 sessions. This has been Live from Mackinac, presented by DTE Energy. It's been great conversations throughout the course of the week. Before I depart, I want to thank Megan Schmidbauer and Tony Antonelli, who have been working behind the scenes to make sure everyone gets here on time and mic'd up. They've been an immense help for me and for the program. My name is Brad Williams. I have been with you the last 3 days, and now we are complete with this program, Live from Mackinac, presented by DTE Energy. I will highlight for you that our few programming highlights coming up, including a keynote address from Governor Whitmer at 3 o'clock, as well as a mayoral debate at 5:30 with the leading candidates for mayor of Detroit. Again, this is Live from Mackinac, sponsored by DTE Energy. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next year.